Hello, dear listeners. Welcome to the ECM Podcast. I'm Caroline Fontanieu, and I'm very happy to host this series that will take you behind the scenes of new music on ECM Records. In this new episode, I'm meeting together Lovano and Jakob. For this interview, we met in a not-so-quiet place in New York City to discuss their tribute to Paul Motian in their latest ECM project, Once Around the Room. Joe and Jakob talk about this project, the influence of Paul Motian in their music and their life, and the importance of transmission.
I think this recording, Once Around the Room, was an incredible session that took some beautiful shapes and sounds within the music. Jakob and I both contributed original compositions that I would say were really influenced by Paul's playing and his ideas about construction and sequencing of sounds and feelings. Paul's inspiration ran very deep in the history of jazz, not just for us, but for everyone that were lucky enough to embrace, his music and his approach. And it turned out to be a tribute to him, in a certain way, but that wasn't like overbearing on the session at all. It was like we're inspired by Paul in every setting that we play. Every setting that I play in, Paul is his ideas and approach about creating music within the music and sharing the space comes into all of my projects and my music, But this was a special session because everybody had relationships with Paul. And it was like a little orchestra sound with the three basses and two percussion, two drummers, and Jakob's atmospheric sounds and feelings. And for me, it was really a beautiful setting to really try to be clear and make statements and phrasing, my phrasing, melodically, to create melodic rhythm. And from playing with Paul through the years, which I first started to play with him in 1981 until his passing in 2011, was a major part of my development as a musician and realizing the depth of what it means to improvise, the art of improvising, sharing the space. And those things really came into how we played together. It wasn't even like what we played, it was how we played. It was beautiful.
Yeah, and also for me, it was such a high point or milestone in my life to meet Paul and to be invited into his group. And somehow, most of my collaborations today are they can all sort of point back to Paul in a way. So he was the first one, and then it all sort of started spreading. And for that reason also it was really wonderful, I think, to go into the studio with some of the people that I met through Paul and that I started musical journeys with after him also, and then just combining people. For that reason also it was really beautiful, I think. It's like a family. He created a family, I think.
Yeah.
So, and I was just immensely proud to be a part of that, of course. I'd like to continue that somehow.
Do you both remember the first time you met him?
I mean, the thing is, I didn't dream of this being materializing. It was a dream I had, of course, to play with Paul, but I never thought it was going to happen. And I still remember getting an email from Steve Cardenas that was where he's confirming that Paul had talked about using me for the bebop band, but Wolfgang Mutzbiel was already sort of involved. And I remember getting that email and seriously just like wanting to upscale it and frame it. I was like, Paul Motian had thought of me for his band. But then a week later, I got the gig because Wolfgang couldn't make that tour, so I didn't even get a chance to frame the email about maybe getting into Paul Motian's group. So that's how much it meant to me somehow. And I met him first time in Italy, at a hotel. He came in with his cymbal bag and he gave me a hug and almost like lifted me off the ground. He said, "Let's go to a rehearsal space. I want to hear how you play." So
no pressure.
No pressure. No, but I saw, his niece sent me all the notes from that tour, and he was very, he was really kind to me, both in writing, but also we had a really good connection, I think. So it was, beautiful meeting.
Yeah, nice story, man. The first time I was in the room with Paul was hearing him with the Keith Jarrett Quartet in Boston, 1972. I think that recording, Fort Yawa, just came out. So with Dewey Redman and Charlie Hayden, Paul and Keith, and I went every night. I played like for a week, and it was just amazing to be in a room with that music, the way those cats played together and paid attention to each other and created all this music. But I didn't meet Paul that night. But it sent me to the woodshed. Because those were the cats I wanted to play with.
You knew of him?
Well, I grew up listening to
Yeah.
Bill Evans and all of the things that he had done, And that music, I was in the audience, for all those recordings, And then hearing him live in the room, feeling the spirit, the expression, also Dewey, Charlie, Those are the cats I wanted to play with. 10 years later, I started to play with them. Joined Paul's band in 81. So, 1979 or so, I went to hear Paul play. He played in New York at the Public Theater on a concert with his trio, Charles Brackeen, J.F. Jenny Clark, which had been recording for ECM also at that time. They had a couple of beautiful recordings, La Voyage, Dance. Some of the tunes that I ended up playing and recording with Paul that he had written for that trio. And they played opposite Dewey Redman's quartet at the Public Theater. So I went down there and I was with this master guitarist, Bill D'Arango, who had played with Ben Webster and Charlie Parker and Dizzy Gillespie and others. He was from Cleveland and he was on the 52nd Street scene with Ben and everybody in the 40s. Anyway, Bill knew Paul and we went to the concert together. And Bill introduced me to Paul that night, and that led to going to his pad, playing with him and basically auditioning. Because he was rehearsing with Mark Johnson on bass and Bill Frisell on guitar. In 1981, he wanted to put a new band together. And I had an association with Mark Johnson, and Mark brought my name up to Paul, and he remembered meeting me, and I was on the Mel Lewis Jazz Orchestra at that time with Mark, playing the Village Vanguard every Monday night. So one Monday, Mark says, this Friday you want to come up and Paul's listening and hearing some saxophone players. Let's expand the trio. So I went up there, and that was it. That was the beginning of a 30-year relationship, and also for Bill Frisell. Because Bill had just started to rehearse with Paul, and he didn't have any gigs, but he had a lot of music, and he was projecting some stuff that ended up happening. And that later that year, we recorded Psalm for ECM. My first meeting with Manfred, we recorded in Tone Studio Bauer, Germany.
Well, back to the project. It's a very special band. It's a very special little orchestra, as you called it. I think you came up with this idea, with this lineup. How did you create this whole little orchestra?
I mean, we were in touch about what to do
We
for
were
a while. Just like
talking
back and
about
forth.
a collaboration, and Jakob suggested the bass situation, and we all just spoke of, because we all have relationships together, but the main idea, I think, was that all the cats had played with Paul, especially the basses. You know? Of course, Joey Barron and Jorge never played with Paul.
No.
Big influences, they're disciples, but they have their own way of playing. So that little percussion section, came together. But I think, Jakob had some beautiful ideas about the three basses. It's great now. It's beautiful.
Yeah. Plus, it also like you said, it's more about the persons than the instruments somehow. And there was, if we ask Thomas, then I felt like we had to ask Larry as well, because he also had a deep relationship with Paul. And if we had those two, it would be unfair to Anders, who also played with. It just felt like it's a natural sort of decision, and it also for me reflected my playing in Paul's groups was always almost always with two instruments, and there are two persons on each instrument. Like the bebop band would be either two or even three guitar players, either two horns or two basses, and so it wasn't really I never thought of it as as something peculiar or anything. It seemed natural like this.
And for the repertoire of the music, there's your compositions, a common improvisation, and one tune of Paul's. Did you discuss a lot about it before, or was it pretty obvious the way you came up with the repertoire?
We each wrote a bunch of tunes.
Yeah.
Jakob sent me things I was studying. I was sending him some of my tunes. And I came in, we started the date with an idea, that piece Sound Creation.
Yeah.
And it was like just a score, an unwritten score. And we went around the room and we improvised this piece. It was like once around the room. And we created all our parts together. But there was an idea about the sequence of things, And that started the whole session, and that, I think, was a nice springboard into an approach about the music, And then I had written a tune called For the Love of Paul. And Paul had a tune called For the Love of Sarah. I don't know if you ever played that tune.
I've never played it, but I know it.
It was for his sister. And I'm not sure if it's on the Story of Marion. It's on one of the recordings.
Yeah.
Maybe with the quintet with Jim Pepper and Ed Schuler. But For the Love of Sarah, it was one of these pieces, man. Just the title alone gives you an idea about maybe how to approach playing something that had that kind of a title. So one of my pieces was called For the Love of Paul. And then As It Should Be is another title that is about a way of playing and trying to create music within the music together, as it should be.
Yeah, and everything sort of turned out as it should, in a way, because we had like 2 days of recording basically, and everybody arrived. I think it was Sunday, and you came in on Monday, and we were supposed to basically just like meet and greet. Joe came at 3:30, 3:45 or something, and then we would just be maybe doing 1 or 2 takes and then go out to eat, and then the Tuesday we would start recording. But then, and we did go out to eat, like at 6:30 or something, but we just finished the recording before that, which was like, and I mean, at that time I didn't even really know, so we come into the studio on Tuesday and start listening, and I'm prepared to do a whole day of different music, and we just realized that we have enough for at least 2 albums already.
We had the date, and that's when we did Paul's tune.
Yeah,
Right?
that's
the second
thing, yeah.
Tuesday.
Yeah.
We did take on drum music.
Yeah.
And, that was it. It was a real magical
Yeah.
experience
Yeah,
for
and
all
so
of us.
you realized, I mean, Jakob, you told Joe when you got into the studio that it was by chance 10th anniversary of Paul's death.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it was really special in the room. Like, tell me about the vibe in the room. Like, all of you together at the recording room. Like, you were all around the room.
Yeah, we all played kind of in a circular setup, and we could see each other, you know. I mean, Jakob was there, and the 2 drummers were right in front of me, and the Anders, bassists here, and so I was kind of maybe in the center in a way, but facing everybody. Everyone had good visual vantage points. And just so there was a lot of cueing that happened just by looking at each other.
Because there was no rehearsal.
And you can't rehearse the unknown.
No. Between this and, turning towards the future and towards life and towards the present also, not only the future. There are so many important spirits around us. Musicians are not musicians, like people who influence us, influence everything that we are today. And when you're in a recording room, you were talking about channeling those spirits, those people who played with people. How to balance the memory, the legacy, the print that someone left in your life and life.
Yeah, well, you can't let it hold you back. You have to celebrate with a joyous feeling and move it into tomorrow. You have to reach forth from those inspirations, from people in your life that might not be here physically with you, but spiritually are with you. And you're representing also for yourself. You have to be yourself, and you can't let that whole trip kind of hold you back. You can't let the gatekeepers hold you back. They have to move you forward. But it's also about who you are and how you perceive yourself. Some people are repeaters, and they want to play with the sound of someone that they love, they're held back with that approach. You can't copy somebody's sound, because your sound is your approach. And, you could maybe for 2 seconds sound like somebody. A lot of people channel and try to sound like Mike Brecker, just as an example. Mike's influence is so huge and made such an impact. And you could maybe have about 2 minutes of Mike. But when you have to play and create music and play for 10 minutes, it gets boring because you're just repeating some things you practiced instead of finding yourself in an approach about melody and rhythm, and to do things that Mike did, to play the way he played. You know, it's not just the tone of the situation. You know, it's the approach about how to share the space with people. You know, so it's a trap, like for a lot of young cats that just transcribe and copy. You know, there's a way to be influenced by how somebody plays without copying them, and let it move you.
But there's also something, I think, like the way we are all connected in a way, like in music, that's a really beautiful thing. You know, like people are not here anymore, but you can still trace them back through different other musicians who are now playing. And I think there's something really beautiful about listening to, like you can hear Stanko in different trumpet players, like a little bit of it, and you can hear that it's like a family tree somehow, that we are all sort of we were all sort of listening to each other and are all connected in a way, trying to just make little changes that makes the music fit where we're at right now somehow.
Yeah.
But
You have to have confidence and a lot of trust.
And also it comes from a place of gratitude, I feel. Like, the more open you are, being grateful for what you learned from those people, those heroes, the more open you are to be yourself with all of those influences.
And the more you put yourself in situations where you're standing toe-to-toe with folks. You know, I'll never forget when I played a concert with Johnny Griffin, and Teddy Edwards, and Vaughn Friedman. It was a saxophone night, Jazz at Lincoln Center, mid-90s. And all of a sudden, I'm in the mix of these three complete masters. But they each had their own approach, and their own sound. And I brought mine in, and I was asked to be a part of that because I think because I was starting to find myself, and I sounded like myself, and I got next to Johnny Griffin, man, you know, who was one of my idols, and like the way he played the horn was phenomenal, but it was always the music that drove him to play the horn like that. You know, he didn't just play as a technical virtuoso for that outcome. He was a virtuoso, but he was playing ideas. And he lifted the rhythm section. A lot of cats like they play the rhythm section, lifts them. Johnny Griffin lifted the rhythm section, man. And so did so many others. Sonny, a lot of saxophone players, you could really talk, you could hear how they lift. But it's lead and follow. You're in and out. You know, you're in and out of the whole thing when you're playing with a drummer in a rhythm section. You know, the drummer will lead you sometimes. Sometimes you lead the drummer, but you have to be able to do that in your approach. You know, and playing with Paul was incredible because he would count. You know, he would come in on a theme. It might be a notey theme, like let's say a dance. Da 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 da. And instead of playing all those notes with you, Paul will go boom, da 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 da, dee da do you know, and he would give you accents that would make you play the theme different than if he was just playing along with you. You know. Paul had a lot of magic in his approach, and that taught me everything about phrasing and breathing, trying to breathe together with cats, and not just finger and blow the saxophone. You know.
Is your experience too? Is it how you
Yeah, I mean, yeah, for sure. It was, well, I mean, I guess like what you mentioned, the actual session we did in Copenhagen, I mean, that was all the month up to that session. Paul was so present to me in a way because I was listening to all the music that he'd made and was writing music with this session in mind. So, but then once we were in the studio, as you say, it was a recording session where we just played music together, of course.
Yeah, but the dance between you two was very natural. That was not. It's not a linear project. It was really dense.
It's all about listening.
Yeah, I was still, because I'm listening to Paul's music. Of course, I've also been heavily influenced by Joe, and it's been a lifelong dream of mine to actually to be able to play some music with him. So for me, it was that was probably the most wild thing during that day, was that to actually record with you. And the first thing you wanted to do was sound creation. You were like, yeah, Jakob and I start together. Or I start and then Jakob comes in, and I'm like, yeah, what do you want to play? and that you didn't say, and I was like, okay, this is interesting. So the tape is rolling and Joe starts playing, and I mean, talk about feeling like somebody threw you off an extremely high cliff, like.
But you follow the sound and you feel what each other's feeling, and you try to contribute and question and answer, and then it
make it sound so easy.
It took shape so beautiful, you know.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, for me that was another really, also of course meaningful experience, but also something I learned a lot from. It's like, and that's, as a young musician, what happens when you're playing with the great masters. Like when I played with Stanko, it was also like, I didn't know what he was talking about before we went on stage, but once he started playing, I could feel it. The same with Paul, like I was standing next to him when he was just like, I can't even describe it in words. It was just, I feel so grateful, like, to have had that experience and playing with you also. And it's like, I think there's a lot of beauty in the fact that different generations also meet and create music, and we all sort of tying the history of music together and one thing that I'm really grateful about is that I feel like I can always be myself within all of this. I feel like I can be myself in Joe's company when we're playing, which is it's pretty wild somehow.
You know, the one thing, man, there's a lot of cats who play very academic.
Yeah.
Which had nothing to do with how we play together or how we play at all. You know, Paul knew all the rudiments, and he could play a march, he could do whatever he felt was called for. But it was very unacademic, and it was creative, and it was about expression, and trying to find the inner music, you know? And that's how the session went for us, and that's how we are as musicians. You know? Some cats who play academic, that's all they can do. They can't break out of that.
Yeah, like you said,
we don't have to name names at all.
You can't.
You hear it and you know in the first phrases.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And some really great players.
Yeah.
Some amazing virtuosic musicians on every instrument, you know. But it's a difference, man, between like a Buddy Rich type player, which is amazing, and a Paul Motian type player.
Yeah, you can practice the unknown, which is like, for me, a growing sort of fascination about music, really. Like, just...
I mean, it's endless.
Yeah, what is it that makes me want to keep being in music and keep wanting to express myself through music? It's like, I can't even put it into words, which is what I find to be the reason why I keep doing it also. Yeah. Somehow.
And is it me, or... the cover is a reference to I Have the Room Above Her?
Probably, yeah.
The trio record, I Have the Room Above Her.
I think that's a
reference.
It
was a very similar cover.
Yeah.
You know, and Once Around the Room.
Yeah.
I think Manfred's his post-production genius is like clear to every project, every record that he's produced through the years. And he pays attention and he knows all kinds of things about that.
I think it's a little wink, a little reference.
I think
Definitely,
so.
for sure. So it's Manfred's tribute to Paul also.
And it's so special.
Because at the beginning, we never spoke about, let's do a tribute to Paul.
No.
Yeah.
But it was clear that it was we all came together and know each other from playing with Paul through the years, you know? That cover and the whole feeling of that.
Yeah, but I mean also the title, because you were saying let's do an improvisation, and we played a little improvisation, each of us. I still remember Anders.
Yeah.
When you said that, because he was like standing, he had Larry Grenadier and Thomas Morgan, and then he was with his electric bass, and he was like, okay, so Anders, you start improvising solo. Man, I've never seen him that pale. Also knowing like when I met Anders, he was like the Broadway albums, everything with Paul Motian. He was like, it's like his it's like his Bible. So it was a big deal, of course. But then once we had done that circle, you looked. There was a camera. Then you looked into the camera and made like a little magic. And then you said let's call that Once Around the Room. But that actual song didn't make it onto the album.
Yeah.
And we were talking about different titles, and then Manfred wrote us an email and saying, "Do you like the title Once Around the Room?" So he had a big influence on the title as well somehow.
Yeah.
Because
For sure. And that whole thing, I Have the Room Above Her is an old vaudeville song or something that Paul brought in for the trio that we had played, and that turned out to be the title cut for that record. But I think all of the other repertoire on that record was Paul's tunes. We did 2 sessions, the last 2 sessions, Time and Time Again, and I Have the Room Above Her. Those are the last 2 trio dates for the ECM, and both of them came together like this date did in the studio, as we just moved from piece to piece, and once we had the form, we stopped. That's it. There's no other takes of other things. Trio session where we recorded a lot of tunes, and it was narrowed down to these pieces that are in the session on the date.
Did the album for Manfred with Paul, and I had never met Manfred before that time, and it was funny because Tony Malaby was there and Chris Cheek and all. It was like people were all like, "Oh, Manfred is going to be here," and I was.
That was here in New York.
Yeah,
too,
I was
right?
in New York, and I was too young to even really
realize
be frightened about that. Man, I had Paul Motian over there. I had like I said, Chris Cheek and Tony Malaby and Jerome Harris was there, and Ben Monder and Steve. I had plenty to worry about. So it was my foremost sort of job. I felt like was okay. Don't fuck it up.
Yeah.
So and then I remember going to the Vanguard with Paul Motian's group maybe 6 months later or something, and the first thing Paul says to me is like, I just mixed with Manfred and he really liked your playing. Which was just like, I don't know, it was quite overwhelming in a way. And then Manfred was the one that sort of, I guess for that reason, got me with Stanko, with whom I toured for 5-6 years after that.
He recommended you to Thomas.
Yeah, that's what Thomas told me. And then,
that's beautiful.
Yeah, so it was, and then we spoke about maybe doing an album under my own name, and he was like, but I'd like you to work some more with Stanko first. So he was also a very, very important. He has played a very important part of my sort of career in a way. And then he suggested a trio album as my debut as a leader for ECM, which at that time I was not I wasn't hearing it at all. I was like, me guitar trio record. Let's get a horn player in there and remove some focus from me in a way. But Manfred was like, no, you did a lot of albums where there was like a hole that was working, but let's have you in a more
in the spotlight.
Yeah, and at that time, it felt like that sort of put me on a path in a way, and he almost forced me to make some new decisions with my music, which
it's beautiful. There's a philosophy about, we were talking about the family, the community, the loyalty. There is a philosophy with ECM and with Manfred Eicher's work that goes so perfectly well with Paul's approach of loyalty. I think I can use that word. Yeah,
and Manfred has a lot of wisdom, man.
And
he having his embrace is really beautiful.
And then, Jon Christensen was playing on my first trio album, and Jon had a huge history with ECM, of course. And then
it's just like connect. You were talking about
all these different So and then if you ask about all the people that are not here anymore, for me it's not about grief or sorrow. It's about joy and being really grateful and celebrate that we've had the opportunity to meet and create something beautiful together.
Thank you so much, gentlemen.
Yeah.
I wish it could be 3 hours, but it's really nice.
We'll get together again.
Of course we will.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Lovano and Jakob Bro about their album Once Around the Room, tribute to Paul Motian. Thank you for joining, choosing and listening to our ECM podcast. I'm Caroline Fontagneux, and I look forward to sharing more music with you in the next episode.